5 movies that will make you think twice about writing. Judas Kiss. Richard Harmon of The 100 arguably salvages this sometimes savagely bad film with his compelling performance as the younger half of its protagonist Danny, a film student hinging his dreams of fame and fortune on a singular work of genius, blithely ignorant to the struggles ahead and eager to sell out and sell himself short at the first opportunity. The older half of the movie's protagonist, Zach, played rather unconvincingly by Charlie David, is Danny's filmmaking destiny, failed and financially reliant on a friend who could have been much more. This quaint bit of magical realism centering on the traumatic past and disappointing future of said desperate wannabe hanging all his hopes on a magnum opus has a relatively solid plot, in contrast with its clunky dialogue and even clunkier delivery, an important message about the locus of our motivation and our expectations as writers. Despite its wobbles, this lesser-known Canadian film is worth seeing in my opinion, if only to appreciate its resounding endorsement of art for art's sake, not for the unlikely recognition or even unlikelier material rewards. To all the naive, validation-seeking writers out there, I say this with the utmost empathy and experience, this one's aimed at you. We love you, Sally Carmichael. Twilight haters rejoice. This is a witty, clever, surprisingly nuanced takedown of the series that didn't just flash a set of fangs, but deeply, deeply sucked, with no two shades of gray about it. After Simon's literary masterpiece hits rocks and his financial situation hits bottom, the author assumes not only a nom de plume, but an alternate identity under which he can churn out marketable garbage featuring a nondescript heroine and the merman she falls in love with. To his chagrin, the YA series, which he claims is sucking the soul out of him and preventing him writing anything substantial or authentic, doesn't merely contractually obligate him to years more creative purgatory, but attracts the eye of Hollywood and seems fated to result in a blockbuster film franchise that could reveal him as its shamefaced creator. With well-deserved jabs at the publishing industry and its absence of meritocracy, silver-tongued stabs at its literary inspiration, a cast of characters evenly distributed between relatable and ridiculous, and a sympathetic hero with sympathetic motives dealing with a comedically disastrous predicament, this lighthearted parody sparkles like a shirtless bloodsucker in sunlight. Authors Anonymous. This dry satire starring Big Bang Theory's Kaylee Cuoco and American Pie's Chris Klein follows a motley bunch of literary beginners on their clumsy journey to become published authors, replete with self-publishing mishaps, shameless self-promotion stunts, relationship fallouts, and the hidden costs of putting all your ego in one basket. When the charming Hannah nabs a publishing deal shortly after penning her first novel, friend and fellow writer Henry, far more experienced, far better read, is shaken by the injustice. Hannah is minimally educated, such that she can barely navigate an interview, and has only taken up writing recently, but her attractions earn her the attention of an influential author, effectively pushing her to the front of the line. The unfairness sends Henry reeling, and he turns on Hannah, despite her humility in her success and her ongoing efforts to support him. In focusing solely on the difference in their abilities, and bemoaning the barrage of rejection letters he's accumulated like so many badges of courage, he neglects to consider the ethos by which she works. Unlike Henry, Hannah writes daily, devoutly. She doesn't wait for mastery to make the practice a priority. Rather than relying on theory, she learns by doing, by observing her peers and accepting their feedback. Therein is a lesson for us all, packaged in this gut punch to the unhappily published and unpublished alike. Sometimes attitude really is everything. All About Who You Know. This self-referential film commentary within a film centers around informal critic of the industry and wannabe award-winning screenwriter Cole, who pursues the daughter of his Hollywood idol in order to slip him a script. Rather Dana Carvey and Opportunity Knocks, if I'm remembering the oldie but goodie correctly, but far less goofy and far more cynical, and not as predictable as you might think. Once he succeeds and wins the coveted feedback of his idol, he rejects the criticism with accusations of washed-up hackery, clinging to his prior ego-affirming assessment of the industry that it's all about who you know. This movie strikes a skillful balance between critiquing the industry and the amateur, denying neither the role of nepotism and economic privilege nor the oversensitivity and entitlement of novices seeking a foot in the door. It's a well-rounded story that works in a romantic subplot without shoehorning it in as something trite, irrelevant, or obligatory. The understated humor isn't trying too hard. The characters are diverse enough not to be drab and dull enough not to be caricatured. If you were looking for a solid example of meta, here it is. Book of Love. Romance fans, you weren't forgotten. This film opens on British author Henry Copper giving a reading to an audience of one. Behind him is a stack of unsold books. In front of him is an eye-opening adventure in Mexico with his novel's translator, Maria Rodriguez, who's taken more than a few artistic liberties with the text, making a salacious sensation of his spectacular literary flop. A development publishers are enthusiastic to exploit, but a personal disaster for the highbrowed author whose work has been rendered unrecognizable. Thrust together again for a this time mutually agreed-upon collaboration, situation, Maria's jaded perspective shifts under Henry's influence, and his inflexible ideals bend under hers. Between his lofty, lackluster philosophy and her lusty, loveless notions of attraction lies a narrative that achieves equilibrium, a story that has substance and selling power, proving two hearts are better than one. The movie reminds us that stories must strike a delicate balance between high-mindedness and humanness, between the sensible and the sentimental. Also, that authors should read their contracts very carefully. Creative control isn't always guaranteed.